Welcome to Hometown Salutes. I have a very special Fayette County guest today. It's Mr. Jim Reidman. Welcome, Jim, to our show.
So thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Let's tell me what branch of service you're in. Were you enlisted or were you drafted, and what years?
I was in the Air Force, enlisted in the Air Force. I was going to be drafted, and I was told that if I was going to enlist, I better do it by the local board. So I listened to them, and I went to Indianapolis and enlisted in the Air Force. It was one of the best things I've ever done.
Did you come from a military family?
My brother John.
He was in the service?
Right. He was shot down over in Germany. Suffered all his life here in Connersville. You know, you remember John at all?
Yes, yes.
He suffered more than any of us, really ever do.
So were your parents supportive of you guys going into the service?
My dad said goodbye to me, said I'll never see you again. So that was kind of touching, but
sure.
But I made it back. It was amazing.
You did come back.
Yeah.
That's great. So basic training. Why don't you tell us, where did you do basic training at, and how long did that last?
I went to San Antonio, Texas. Went into Lackland Air Force Base, and there's probably 40 to 50 in each building, barracks they had. And I was in basic training about four months. And then from there we went to another training base, but the training base would teach us how to walk, how to march,
Was basic training hard?
Not really.
Not really? Okay.
And during that time when I was in basic, I went in thinking I could be a pilot, but they said you can't because you have to be a college graduate. And I said, well, I'm not. So within maybe a month or two, came out a bulletin on the board, said, we'll accept high school graduates now if you want to take the training, want to take the testing. So another fellow and I took the testing, and we both passed, and we had in the pilot training course.
Oh, wow. And so then you got into cadet training?
Cadet training, right.
So how did you get into that?
In the same way, just once I decided I wanted to be a pilot, they put you automatically in cadet training.
Okay.
And the cadet training was at Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas.
Okay.
And they had our people, and they had foreign students that are training at the same base. It was a military assistance program that we offered to other countries, and that's how I happened to meet a couple of good Italian friends way back.
Okay, and we'll talk about them soon. So you were a mechanic on the base at that time before you became a pilot, is that right?
I was just assigned there just as a housing area. They didn't know what to do with me, so they put me there.
Okay.
And they let me work on airplanes, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just followed the other mechanics around and just did what I could.
Okay. So, and then when you flew, what plane did you fly first?
We started out in T6, Texan. A lot of people remember it as a Texan. It was a single engine, tail wheel type airplane, which was we call it a workhorse because it was a tough airplane. It was hard, not easy to fly. It flew well, but it wasn't what you'd call a really easy airplane, especially compared to jets. When you get into them, they just move.
Right. Wow. So on the T6, you flew the T6 airplane, and you were the last guy to fly the T6. Is that right? Or do you want to tell about this?
Well, there's to get approved as a pilot or continue your training, there was 40 of us in the group, and I was number 40 to solo. And they kept saying, well, what's wrong, Reidman? I said, I have no idea, other than I don't know where I'm going when I'm spinning down toward the ground. I can recover, but I don't understand why. So they give me about at least 3 or 4 different instructors tried to teach me how to do it. None of them could change my mind. So they finally found an older guy, an older fella. He
Yeah.
Come on, Reidman. He said, I'm going to teach you how to spin. So took me up there, and he said, now go into the spin. I said, he said, what do you see now? I said, all I see is the ground spinning around. Well, I want you to recover. what do you mean? He said, I said, well, I've been told to push the rudder down and pull the stick back and it will recover, which it did. But I said, I don't understand why. He said, well, you're disoriented. When you first go into spin, you want to pick out an object on the ground and keep that object in your mind as you go around. You pick it up every time you go around. And you heard this about dancers, skaters, and stuff like that.
I have heard that before, yep.
It's the same principle.
Same thing as a pilot.
And so I find this, he said, see that highway down there? I said, yeah. He said, just stay on that line with the nose of this airplane. So I did, come out of it. He put me in the spin 3 or 4 times, and I recovered every time. He took me back on the ground. He said, he's gone, he's okay. But I would wager that 60% of the guys that did that didn't realize what they had done other than rudder and pull the stick back. And I think Don can tell me that it's not an automatic thing that you like. You want to just, you know, you get into a spin, you'll have some reference. And I had reference then once he told me how to do it. So that was it.
You did it. Wow. So let's talk about your buddies. You met 2 Italian buddies.
Met 2 Italian guys. Yeah, they were kind of needed a little assistance on things to do. And one was a general, you might say, a average person in Italy, very nice guy. And the other one was the son of some big business people. Of course, they were different in character. And of course, I liked them both because they were both different. But you tended to like the guy that was more smaller and humble, you know.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of good times together. And I taught him a lot of things about America. And we were there going over Christmas. And I said, do you want to go to my home at Christmas? My mother said, bring him home. It's okay with me. So we had no way to get home, so we had to buy a car. We went downtown San Angelo and bought an old Buick, $150.
So is that this car here?
That's that car there.
Okay.
We drove it home. 18 quarts of oil later, we got to Connersville.
Oh my gosh.
And we still had the car. And my dad says, you're not driving it back. Don't plan on it. So we didn't.
That's hysterical. That is so funny. So when they got here, you said that several people met him, your mom, your family, and then Shirley Risch liked him as well, right?
I'm not sure I'd put that on the air, but she probably wouldn't mind.
Oh no, she's so sweet. But you said that Shirley pinned you?
Shirley came to San Angelo, not San Angelo, Selma, Alabama.
Her and
on the base and pinned my wings on. My sister came with her.
You and your sister,
yeah.
Her and her sister.
And of course had some other family there too.
Okay, wow. All right, so then after training, and you flew over to Japan first or Korea?
No. First base I went to was Craig Air Base was in Selma.
Was in
Selma.
Selma.
I stayed there at that base and started training there. So
all right.
Got through a little bit of training there, and then they moved me to Williams Air Base in Chandler, Arizona.
Okay.
Then I went to Las Vegas.
Oh wow.
I flew out of gunnery training in Las Vegas. We had a lot of good training with a lot of military people. From there, I went to Japan.
Okay.
We flew over in a big cargo. The night we got to Japan, we got on the ground. They said, we got some good news. I said, what's that? They said, we just signed the armistice with Korea. So we were sitting in Japan on that night.
Wow.
And then, of course, we hadn't got to Korea yet. Next day or two, we went to Korea. Of course, I pulled on a simple air base over there. They brought us into, you might call it a hut, village type base. Mm-hmm. It had metal planking runways, no cement. It was a good base, good place, and we flew out of that area for probably about a year in Korea. And then from there, our whole squadron flew from Korea to Japan, and ended up in Chitose. And when we did that, we switched airplanes. We went from the day fighter into the all-weather fighter, called the 86D. We prayed for rain. We wanted to fly, and we didn't care if it would rain because we could get on the ground. didn't worry about the weather. In the all-weather, airplane, you got radar and so on. And you put it on the ground. You got the ground controllers.
So it didn't
all
matter.
the help that you need. Yeah. So.
Wow. That's crazy. So when you were over there, did you get to take liberty? And
Oh, we could take liberty anytime. We didn't have to ask anybody.
you didn't have to ask?
If we were off for the day, we could get on our bike and ride down to Sapporo and back, or just ride around, or get out on the runway and run back and forth on the runways with the little motorbikes.
Yeah. What other aircrafts did you fly?
Well, that was the T6 was the first one. Mm-hmm. Then I went to the T-28, which was a nose wheel type airplane. Instead of a tail wheel, the nose wheel touched the ground as you landed. The tail wheel, you put the tail wheel on the ground. You landed on wheels and not the back end down. This one, you landed straight, and you were on the ground, 3 wheels on the ground, a nose wheel in front,
Okay.
2 on the side.
Okay.
It was called a T-28.
A T-28.
And it sounded like a John Deere tractor when you run it, but that was the way it ran. It was a 7-cylinder engine. It was really kind of laughable when you think about it. And we flew that plane quite a bit. And that was in Chandler, Arizona, or outside of Phoenix. So I spent about 6-7 months there.
Okay. So you went to Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, and that's where you said that you went through the gunnery training
Gunnery
there?
training in Las Vegas, Dallas Air Base.
And so you flew the F-86?
Right.
All right. And it had a 650 caliber machine guns in the nose.
That's correct. We fired at a banner that, the other plane was pulling a banner down it, and we'd pull up like we were flying on the aircraft, pull in and try to shoot it. See if you get some bullets through the banner. And about every 4th or 5th bullet had a tracer marker on it, so they knew that it was me because of the color of the bullet. And the bullet went through the rag. We call it the rag. It was a banner.
Yeah.
It would make a color mark. We had different colors: red, yellow, blue. That left the hole in the banner, you might say.
Yeah.
And when we got on the ground, they'd count them up and say, "Hey, Reidman, you got 6 holes."
How
Or
many
you
you
didn't
hit?
get any.
That's funny. That's really neat.
We flew and left a lot of cartridge, shells, casings, you might say, over that desert in Las Vegas. I'll tell you, there are millions of them, I'm sure, out there. I guess I could fill his pockets if he went walking through there. You could find them.
Why don't you talk about the one time that you took off and you didn't have power, you said?
Oh, that was back in Japan.
That was in Japan?
Yeah, that was back in Japan.
Why don't you talk about that?
Well, we were sitting on what we called 2-minute runway alert. Sit at the end of the runway in the aircraft. The power unit plugged in, but not running. Aircraft wasn't running, but the power unit was plugged in, so when you were ready to start, you just pushed the button and started. The horn went off. We took off to the inner wingman. We got airborne, and probably 300 or 400 feet, 500 feet, we lost contact with our base. Kept calling them, nobody answered. Kept calling, nobody answered. We went ahead. We had to make the choice because we were in weather already, because we had clouds that morning, because we had just had the big storm around that area. We went ahead and flew out as far as, tried to get above the 18,000 feet mountains and tried to be safe in that. And we just kind of dallied around because we didn't have anybody to talk to. We didn't know. Actually, we knew about where we were, had no real true location. Finally, I realized I had the IFF switch on this airplane, which is an automatic emergency alert. And anybody on the ground sees that on the screen while they call. They called me, said, "Aircraft with IFF on. Can we help you?" And I said, "Yeah, we're up here with no radio contact." And I said, "We are from Chitose Air Base." I said, "I'd like to go back there." He said, "Well, we'll bring you into our base here, Misawa." I said, "Can I get me back to Chitose?" He said, "Yeah, I can do that too. See, this is another 400 miles." And he said, I'll take you up there if you want to go." So I said, "Well, lead us on." So he led us back up to Chitose, And he even let me down. He said, now you're cleared to drop, circle down toward the field. And he got me down to about 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And he said, you should be in the clear. And you should almost probably see the runway. Looked out in front, there it was. Our base was on the ground. I said, I got in sight, don't worry. Then I thank you very much. And he was 400 miles away, directed me into that base.
Oh my gosh.
Practically put me on the ground,
Yeah.
And we landed, and of course we had about 40 or 50 cheerleaders waiting on the ground because they knew we were up there. Our whole squadron knew we were there. We were the only two people that was in the air at the time. So they were there to greet us when we got on the ground, and we were almost out of fuel. And we both decided we probably can't make a go-around because we're not going to make it. So I said, well, then we're going to put it on the ground. So we put it, which you can't imagine. You're sitting up here at 5,000 feet and you want to be on the ground. And to get that done, you got to slip the airplane. You don't just fly it. You got to slip it. So you just slid it sideways and down it went. About 1,000 feet up, corrected it back up, started flying. Got on the runway, put the gear down and had everything. He landed right side of me. We both got on the ground, no problem. But it was kind of hairy, hairy experience.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, I mean, were you scared to death? Or did you not have time to really think about it?
We could always bail out. And it was just luck that I flipped the switch and the guy called me and said, if you need help, we'll be glad to help you. And of course, he was encouraging me to come there. And I said, well, I'd just soon go back home if I can. He said, I'll take you home. So he did it all with the radar, put us up there over the base. And we had to have clearance to do it because we were surrounded by 18,000 feet mountains around our air base there. And we had to go down in the center of that, you might say. So we needed guidance.
Yeah, that is crazy. So what caused the power outage?
There was a typhoon hit Hokkaido. And I understand, we just hearsay that they had a couple of ships that were trying to come into the port there. And one of the ships got
capsized.
Cockeyed. Yeah. And all the load transferred to the back of the ship.
Oh.
And of course it took it down. And when it did that, it took a lot of power lines with it. So we were out of power probably most of that day, or maybe longer.
So you were over there 10 months. So you said they gave you a goodbye party. You want to talk about that?
Wasn't too big a party. We wanted to have a dinner down at a local Japanese restaurant. And they said, well, what do you want? And we said, we'd like to have a duck dinner. So they said, well, we don't have duck enough to feed you. So we said, well, we'll get the ducks if you'll prepare them. So we took your airplanes and flew over the water and brushlands to browse the ducks up. And we had pilots on there with shotguns shooting the ducks. And within about an hour, we had 50 ducks. We had more ducks than we needed. And it was a beautiful evening. Celebrating that duck fest.
Oh, that is funny.
They served them. They were just black as coal.
Really?
On the plate, yeah. But they were delicious.
Huh.
I remember it very well.
So after that, then you came back to the States, to Rapid City?
That's correct.
South Dakota? Mm-hmm. And you were on this base, Ellsworth Air Force Base, for about a year?
About a year, yeah.
And so what did you do there?
Well, we flew observance mainly,
Okay.
We sat alert. We had what they called an alert shack at the end of the runways. Mm-hmm. It was a big building. It was a small hangar, but you could put one or two airplanes in it. And they had automatic doors that opened and closed. And if the horn blew, the doors would automatically open and your jet engine would start up and off you'd go. I was there about a year and I never had an alert call. Never, sat on the runway a lot of times. We called it a 5-minute alert then because we had bunks we could sleep in the hangars.
Yeah.
They had a place we could go rest. And if it's 5-minute alert, you got 5 minutes to get down to the airplane. So a 2-minute alert, you sat in the airplane on 2-minute alert. You stayed on the ground. it's just according to how soon they might want you to get airborne, you know.
Okay. So you flew a B-52 in a practice mission, and how was that?
No,
You almost crashed a B-52?
I almost hit it.
Okay. Oh, you almost hit it.
We were fighting or flying against a bunch of B-52s flying in from the Canada area. Now I'm in the. They were coming across country, and of course we were on a tactical mission to see if we could spot them and if we could intercept them. Well,
Okay.
we intercepted them all right. I was flying it across. The guy says, "You're getting very close to your target." I said, "Okay." About that time, I felt the airplane bumped.
Yeah.
I saw the lights of the plane above me go over my head, and I said, "Oh no!" I said, "I really didn't like it." I told him, I said, "You know, you almost got me crashed into one of those airplanes." They apologized. They took us.
Oh my gosh.
But I was all upset, very upset that night. It was a very, very dark night. There are bad nights to fly, and that's one of them. Real dark is no fun at all. Most of the time, you got some haze light, you know, that you can tell about where you are, even though it's dark out.
And it said that you buzzed past Mount Rushmore quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I used to go at Mount Rushmore, keep the belly down. Nobody could see my side, so they couldn't get my number. We'd buzz it. I flew a T-bird down over Connersville.
Really?
Down the canal pad. Nobody knew I was coming, but nobody knew it was me. But I flew right down from 30th Street.
Yeah.
In fact, it took me a little while to get my bearings where it was. I couldn't hardly find Connersville. But we were landing in Dayton, and I said, let's just go buzz Connersville. It was only 50 miles. It takes about 5 minutes to go from here to Dayton. We buzzed Connersville. I don't know if anybody saw me or not, honestly.
That's funny.
A lot of people said they heard the thing go over, but they didn't know who it was.
Oh, they did hear it?
Yeah.
And it was you.
Yeah.
So you did a solo air show?
A what?
You did a solo air show? You went to Pierre to do a solo air show?
Yeah, Pierre.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it was all in the air, so there wasn't much I could see, but I did see a lot of people on the ground. And of course, and to make it more thrilling, because you fly as low as you dare and make all the noise you can, and then when you get over the crowd, you pull straight up or try to put on some kind of show and dazzle them. That show on probably spent 15, 20 minutes there. Then I had to go back to the air base, which is Rapid City.
That's funny. And so the temperature there was pretty cold? 30 or 40 below?
When I got there, when I got into Rapid City the first time, we had a snowstorm that I'd never got through. It was amazing. We had probably 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground in Ellsworth, at Rapid City, South Dakota, when I got on the ground. But now, when I was in Japan, I had 200 inches of snow in Chitose. It almost covered the barracks, the Quonset type barracks we lived in.
Yeah.
The snow almost covered them, almost got above them.
Really?
We had to dig our way out, you know.
Oh, wow. So then you were discharged from Ellsworth Air Force Base after about a year? Mm-hmm. And then that's when...
And I drove back with my brother Bob and his wife. We came back to Connersville.
Back to Connersville.
They met me. Well, I had a car, and they got on the train here and took the train to Rapid City.
Oh, okay. And
then when they got there, they called me, and I picked them up. We spent the night there, and then the next morning we left, headed for home. So that was it.
So was the service something, are you glad that you joined the service?
Oh, yes, it was.
Good experience?
Very, very good experience. Good for me and good for a lot of people I met. It's just, I never had a bad time in it at all.
Yeah.
Everything was always something new, and to get it done, usually it was very gratifying. So.
Yeah. And something you would never experience. I mean, it's just...
Well, I'm not going to say you're lucky if you didn't have to, but there was not much choice. I just did it. And
So were you able to keep in touch with any of your buddies in the service?
Some, not very many. No,
not very many?
No. The Italian boys, we went to Rome to see one of them.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
You spent time with him there?
Yeah. one of the pilots I knew, he went back to I'm trying to think, Milan or one of the cities that wasn't in Rome, but he went back as a flight instructor, and the student drove him into a lake, so he got killed. The one pilot. Then the other pilot, we met him in Rome, and he had us set up in a hotel in Rome over for a few days, and we visited his home. He arranged a trip for us to see the Pope. We went to an audience with the Pope when we were there, and we met his wife. And we had a real good reunion. But since then, he's passed on. So it's been.
He has. Okay.
It's a shame.
So you came back. Came back to Connersville. So let's talk about. Your family is very well known in Connersville, and you've done a lot for Fayette County. So let's talk about Reidman Motors.
Well, I don't think we've done that much.
Oh, you've done a lot.
We're still in business. That's all.
That's awesome.
We thank God for that.
So who started Reidman Motors?
My dad.
It was your dad.
Yeah. He came here in 1926.
1926.
And he moved into the building where Poe's across from the firehouse.
Oh yeah.
That big building's for sale now. Mm-hmm. His first dealership was in there for about 7 months, and the building that we're in became available during that period, so he moved from there over to that building. It was called Green Brothers built it. They built it in 1926. They built it in 24. My dad moved it in 26. So he was only 2 years old when he moved in there.
Wow.
But he kept it going, and instead of staying there and doing it, he turned it over to Johnny and the kids, and he loved the farm, so he went back to the farm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we farmed with him a little bit too. The family, we all got involved in it a little bit. So. And
then now, your kids are running it. Your son?
Yeah, and he's got his 2 daughters with him in the store.
And they're working
they're
too.
Doing well.
Your granddaughters.
Yeah, granddaughters. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's really neat. You guys have done a lot for our community.
Well, we do some, but not very much.
You do a lot. You and your wife, you guys are just a great family. So is there anything you want to that we've missed that you want to
There's probably so many things I forgot.
I know.
Can't pull them all back, that's hard.
It's hard
to do, Well, I say it was a good experience for me for the 4.5 years. I enlisted for 4 years, and then when I went to cadet training, they extended me in 6 months because the training period took a little longer than normal, So
okay.
Until they got me into the training program, we'd lost 6 months, you might say. That's why they extended it to 6 months. So.
Wow. So when you got back to Connersville, how long was it until you married your wife, Annette?
Oh my.
Was it much later?
No, it wasn't very long. Probably, what was it, Mother?
That's a surprise question.
Yeah, that was. It's hard to remember those days.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for coming. This is just really exciting that you came to do the show and to tell everybody about your experience. I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice, and I want to thank you for your friendship.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
Be sure to tune in next month for another Hometown Salutes.